Hey everyone, I'm back showing you what you will build in pack 18 of the Millennium Falcon. Um, Basically, pack 18 was all about installing or building the portside mandible. Now, I also wanted to show off, I know I've been teasing this for a while, as you can tell from looking at both mandibles, I did finally get a start on weathering. I think I've got a technique that's locked in pretty good. Um, I'll just kind of go over what I did here. Um, I just kind of did like an uneven, blotchy overspray with some grays and then some earth tones and then a color I think is called mud. And then I used some rust streaking effects. That's actually an enamel paint that you spray on and then let it sit for a few minutes. Have a small brush that you have just kind of damp with some thinner and then just very lightly brush it back and it will give you that nice streak effect that you see there. Once I get into the main body of the ship, I have learned some new weathering techniques lately that I'm going to be using on like some bigger flat areas. And once I got the paints down, then I went through, brought out some accents with powders. You can kind of see some of that there. Did some light streaking coming out of some of the various boxes and components. And I actually worked on both sides of the mandible. The hardest thing about doing this is making it look random so you don't look like you're following a pattern. You want it to kind of look blotchy. And then I've used some of those same techniques then on the details. A lot of rust colors, some earth colors just to keep it from looking too grayscale. You can see that there. And then one of the things I did, anytime there was a piece that looked like it was, if it'll come into focus here, like a vent or something, I hit that with some black powders just to kind of make it look like there was, at one time smoke or whatever coming out of there. Show you some of this over here that I did. You get it up under the light. There you can see that there where I did that. Recesses I darkened a little bit just to make them visually look like they're a little bit more sunk in, like there's some machinery there that, over the years and through use and exposure to fires and explosions, which we all know the Falcon would have taken some damage. Kind of highlight some shadows a little bit, some more rust effects to kind of bring out some of the aging. And then this was the mandible I built in the previous pack, but I did a lot of the same techniques on it. You can see there. It's kind of tedious work, but it's oddly very relaxing to be able to do this, especially once I got my technique nailed down. And then I'll turn this around here and I'll show you this side of it. Now there is a huge mistake on here that I noticed. And I'm sure some of you are looking at this right now if you're passionate about the Falcon and are screaming at me. If we look right here, see the very end of that? This is correct. This is the right way it's supposed to be. I believe that's the right one. Yes, that's correct. That's the way it's supposed to be. If we look at starboard mandible, you can see that I installed that part backwards. I didn't catch that until 2 days after I had glued it in there with super glue. So there's no taking it out without breaking things and making it worse. So I'm just going to leave it like that, and I'm just pointing it out to you. So if you're building this, be careful. As a very famous model builder says, I make mistakes, so you don't have to. But if you stack them on top of each other and kind of do a side-by-side comparison, you can see where the mistake was made. It's not earth-shattering. It's definitely not something that's going to ruin it. 99% of the people that would look at this, which it's just going to be sitting in my office when it's done, so the only people that will probably ever see it are me, my wife, and probably my kids if they come in here and they don't pay attention to this. So no one's really going to notice. It's one of those things I notice. It drives me insane, but I've put it out of my mind. So anyway, there's the mandibles. They are complete. Another little tip when you are working on weathering and your paints and you got the airbrush going and you got your powders flying everywhere, take a little piece of masking tape, put it over the floodlight there. So you keep any paints off the lights. And then something else I ran into, after everything was done on here, all the paints, all the powders, I went over it with a matte varnish. I don't recommend or tell people to stay away from brands. Everybody's got their own thing they use, and that's fine. I don't have anything bad to say about any paints I've ever come across. However, let me open the drawer here. I'll show you these bottles. I mostly use Vallejo varnishes, mostly because we don't really have a lot of hobby stores in my area, and our local Hobby Lobby, they carry some Createx stuff, but most of what they carry is Vallejo. It's what I've been using for the last couple of years since I started dabbling in airbrushing, and it works great. I have nothing against Vallejo products at all. Like I said, if you have something you use that works better, I'm all for it. Go ahead and drop a recommendation in the comments. I'll give it a try. I'm not sold on Vallejo, but I'm not against them at all. But Vallejo offers 2 matte varnishes. You can see the bottles here. They're premium color and then what they call the Mecha color. And they are both matte acrylic varnishes. I thought they would be the same. They're not. They're both very good products. I don't have anything bad to say about them. But if you're looking for a dead flat finish like I've got here with pretty much zero light reflectivity, no shine to it at all, you want to look for the Vallejo Premium Color matte varnish. The Mecha Color, I thought they had just changed the packaging, so I bought a big bottle of it on Amazon. I thought, cool, this will last me forever. Went to spray it on something, checked it the next day and thought, that's got a little bit of a shine to it. So the Mecha Color does have a little bit of shine when it's done. It's not gloss by any means. For 99% of what you'd want to use a matte varnish for, the Mecha Color's perfect. For the Falcon, though, especially with the scorch damage, the rust damage, I wanted dead flat. And so for that, this is the one you want to get here, the Premium Color. And I found this. This was actually the first matte varnish I'd ever used. My first bottle ran out on something previous I was working on. I think it was when I was working on the interior. And when I went to order more, I was on Amazon, and that's when I saw the Mecha Color in the big bottle, and I thought it was the same product. It's not. It's a very good product, but it didn't match the level of dull that I wanted for what I was building on this ship. I will probably continue to use this for any model cars I build, diorama builds, things like that. Very good product. This is better for what I'm doing on the Falcon. And then I also weathered up the radar dish. You can see there. Did some enhanced rust streaking on it. And you can see that there. And once this is mounted on the actual hull of the ship, then on the lower edge, where it's right next to the actual hull plating on the ship, I am going to make sure I do some rust streaking on there to show where rust is run down there. And then again, off the supports on the back that you can see. And then I also, the cockpit housing, I got this weathered up. And you can see that there. And again, same technique, some different grays, different gray scales, and then some earth tones to actually look like dirt or sand. And then a little bit of rust on there, just for a little. Sometimes you got to give them the old razzle dazzle. And then there's the cockpit canopy. And then the last thing I weathered up, and this actually took longer than I thought it would, is I did the cockpit tube. This took me about 2 weeks because this was the first thing I did. And at first I had gone over, and you can still see remnants of it on all the panel lines. I'd hit that with black powder, varnished it to lock it in, thought, that looks great, that looks amazing. Woke up the next morning and thought, I really should stay away from the whiskey when I'm weathering, because it looked like a zebra. I mean, it really did. It looked cartoonish. So I got some dark grime Archive X paint, or some light grime, which is pretty much exactly the color of the hull of the Falcon. Resprayed almost all of it. Unfortunately, when I did that, it lightened those dark streaks up, so they almost looked baby blue. So then I got the Archive X dark grime and just kind of oversprayed the whole thing until I finally got to this stage where the recesses were a little darker, but it didn't look like a zebra and it didn't look like baby blue. I used some of the enamel rust streaking paint. You can see here, did some select streaking on some of the components where the streaking would naturally run down the cockpit tube. This vent here, originally this whole thing had been done in powder, brushed on like a black powder. I didn't like the way it looked, so I just kind of created my own narrative. So I went over it with the light grime and again with the dark grime, and then some very select rust streaking. But the outer ring of it here, I kept the black on there to look like this vent was blowing, I don't want to say carbon or soot, but I mean, you leave a fan run for a while and then you look at the blades and they'll be kind of black and fuzzy. So that was the effect I wanted to go for there. And there you can see I did more of the details, did some surface rusting. And then on the bottom, I pretty much did the same thing. You can see it there. And then this damage back here, I just kind of went around that with some various gray and black colors just to kind of add some scorching to it. I did leave some of the darker rust and some of the darker shading here on the angle just to kind of make that visually set back a little bit. And then using the rust streaking, I looked for any place that looked like it had a pipe going into the hull. I made sure to do some rust around that, so it would kind of give the effect of hydraulic leaks, things like that, places where moisture might gather. Then, of course, when you do that, make sure you use masking tape and mask off the cockpit so you don't get paints in there. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now. I have learned some great rust techniques that I'm going to be using once I get on the flat surfaces of the hull. And I will link a video in my next video. I'll put a link in there to the video I found on YouTube that taught me an amazing way to do rust techniques I don't know if you've ever heard the term. I'm also going to be using some of the what's called the salt technique, and that's where you put your rust colors down that you like, and then wait till it dries, wet it a little bit. You actually sprinkle table salt on it, and then go over it with your base color, which would be the light grime in the case of the Falcon. That's the hull color. Once everything is completely dry, you go back, scratch off the rust you put on there using an old paintbrush, an old toothbrush, whatever, and it pulls up the little tiny particles where you can actually see the rust effect through it. It's hard to explain without showing it to you, but I'll show it to you when I do it. If I knew how to do video editing, I would actually show me doing it, but I'll explain it in more detail when I actually do it, so I have an example to show you. It looks amazing. There weren't a lot of flat places on this to do it. I could have done it on here, but I'd already pretty much finished these. So, but I will do it. I will show it to you. And at the time, I will link videos to different ways to do rust. If you're interested, I'm going to use a lot of it also on model cars. Show some of so they'll look like the cars I drove in high school. But anyway, so that's it, guys. That is what I did on pack 18. And this is the start of the weathering process. There's still a lot of weathering to go, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys where I'm at right now. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I sure appreciate it. And make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks.